And welcome to another episode of Reborn Radio. We are here today with actually a lot of terrific stuff to talk about. I am really excited. One of the reasons I'm really excited is this episode marks the first episode that we have a guest with us, Mr. Andy Poole. Andy is someone that I was introduced to through Alex. And Andy's one of those guys that when I'm around him, when I'm talking to him, I'm just like, oh my gosh, he's so smart. I just kind of revel in that for a little bit. Like the guy is a walking, talking index of historical data, and that's one of the reasons we brought him on here tonight. So, why don't I'm going to kick it over to Alex, and you're the one who introduced me to Andy. So what's the backstory there, brother?
No, man, what is the backstory? Almost like high school. Was it high school, Andy?
Oh, wow.
It was a ways
ago. It was late high school, early college for me, I think.
Dang. Yeah, it was way back then. I remember a lot of Skype stuff. A lot of, what did we do? Company of Heroes 1, I remember. That's like the earliest memory I have right now.
Before that, I think we met through a forum.
Yeah, stuff like that. But, yeah, it's been a long time, but Andy's been a good friend of mine, and he currently hold an MA in history, if I'm correct. So
that is correct.
He learned some stuff. He learned a few things. Just
awesome. Where from, Andy? Where'd you get your MA from?
I got my MA from an online program through Wayland Baptist University. They're located in Plainview, Texas.
Oh, nice. Super cool. Awesome. Yeah. We're all big fans here on Reborn Radio of online degree programs. It turns out that was a big thing for all of us. So, anyways, welcome to Andy. Great to have a good friend and a dear brother in the Lord with us today. Bring some of his expertise with us. Before we get into our main topic, which we're going to talk a little bit about, the historical revisionism, I should say, of what has been done to the Crusades. Before that, there was something that came up during the week that we just have to talk about for a few quick minutes. Unless you've been living under a rock, no doubt you have heard about the controversy surrounding Chip and Joanna Gaines. I'm a little bit more familiar with who they are because my wife, for a short period of time, binge-watched. I can't remember what the show is called, but the Chip and Joanna Gaines have a show that's on TV. Fixer Upper, that is the name of the show. Basically, they help couples find a house that is run down, busted up, and then they help them with the purchase process, and then they turn it into a beautiful house. And I would totally recommend it. However, one thing it does to me, I'm just going to give a forewarning to everyone, it really makes you want to go buy a dumpy house and fix it up. And for people like me who can't fix things, that's a problem.
Dude, can I just say, I need these people. I will gladly let these people come. I'm really in the market for like a rundown house I can fix up right now. This is actually prime target for me. Maybe I should watch this show.
Maybe you should. We'll just do a shout-out right now. Chip and Joanna Gaines, if you are watching this, please give Alex a call. He needs some help up in Louisville, Kentucky.
That's right.
But the reason we're talking about them is an article that came out on Buzzfeed. Of course, as always, we'll be sure to post our sources on our website. But the article was called Chip and Joanna Gaines' Church is Firmly Against Same-Sex Marriage. And the author is Kate Author. I would recommend to everyone that you go and check this article out because in my personal opinion, as a non-expert, but as someone who enjoys doing lots of modern-day reading, lots of journalistic reading, it's an example of poor journalism. I don't want to go into a lot of details because we want to go over this pretty quickly. But basically, this is the gist of what you're going to read in the article. Basically, the author goes through how the church, because Chip and Joanna Gaines are professing Christians, the church that they go to has the absolute audacity to be opposed to same-sex marriage. So what I did is I went to the church's website and I pulled up beliefs to see what they had to say about family. And it's pretty straightforward. This is exactly what it says about family. It says God has ordained the family as the foundational institution of human society. It is composed of persons related to one another by marriage, blood, or adoption. Marriage is the uniting of one man and one woman in covenant commitment for a lifetime. And then it goes on to do a further description. That's basically it, what it has to say about marriage right there. Of course, if you're a part of our modern day culture and you read through that, the revisionism is marriage is between a man and a woman, and we freaking hate with an absolute passion anyone who is a part of the LGBTQ community, which, of course, if you're anyone that has any form of rationality, does not exist in their statement of faith whatsoever. This is really the big thing, guys, that caught my eye. One of the paragraphs in the article says, when reached by phone, Antioch Community Church, that's the church they go to, communications director pointed me towards the church's website on their beliefs, where it states marriage is the uniting of one man and one woman in covenant commitment for a lifetime. The church has held the same position since Seibert, who is the pastor of the church, founded it 17 years ago. And my immediate statement was like, oh, wow, they held it 17 years ago. And help me out here, Andy. How long has the Christian church been opposed to, or has defined marriage as between a man and a woman?
Since Genesis 1:1, or Genesis 1.
So a few millennia. Would it be safe to say for a couple thousand years?
A little while.
Okay, so basically we're supposed to be amazed that they've held this view for 17 years. And Michael Brown, I tweeted out earlier on the Reborn Humanity Twitter, he wrote an article where he references that, and he says, Chip and Joanna attend a church that actually believes what the Bible says. They're a part of a congregation that preaches what the church has taught for 2,000 years. Worse still, their pastor considers homosexuality to be a sin caused by abuse, although whether fixer-upper or couple agrees is unclear. And then Michael Brown says, horror of all horrors, what kind of monsters are these two? So basically, this was the big story. Essentially, these two just happen to hold to the statement of belief concerning marriage that the Bible has taught since, like Andy said, since Genesis. Just
chapters 1 and 2, yeah.
Yeah, chapters 1 and 2, exactly. Which, if anyone's curious, check out the last program, because we read Genesis. We read that verse where a man shall leave his father and mother and cling fast to his wife. We read that in the Word on the Street Bible. Turns out it sounds a little bit different in the Word on the Street Bible.
Oh gosh, the Word on the Street Bible.
Amen.
So on a previous episode, we were ragging on some like hip new Bible translations. There's the Message Bible and Word on the Street Bible, and it was sad. I just want to give some context for that. We should really read it. It's good entertainment.
Absolutely, it really is. It's really funny to read. But here's the main thing, and I'll be done. I'll have said my piece with this.
Oh, okay.
The main thing I want to point out is BuzzFeed tried to create a stir about this issue, that the Gaines might be opposed to homosexuality, which really, I know it's becoming rare in our culture, but it should not be a rarity that we find Christians who are opposed to same-sex marriage. And it's not so much, I would say, as opposed to same-sex marriage, except as it is more of the affirmation of the way that marriage was designed. It's not like we sit here and say, oh, we hate gays. Not even remotely close. We are defending the true institution as instituted in the Word of God by the Creator of humanity himself. But my main point is this. They tried to create a stir, and it worked, but not in their favor. Pretty much everyone across the board, minus the Huffington Post, which, I mean, unless you're a hippie, who cares? Across the board, everyone and their mother came down on the BuzzFeed for this poorly written article trying to create a storm about two people who have never uttered anything about same-sex marriage or marriage in general outside the fact that they're very happily married. So I would highly recommend that people check out the Washington Post. We'll post these articles up. Washington Post, the Independent Journal Review wrote a terrific article of sarcasm. It's called "Here Are the 10 Horrible Things That Chip and Joanna Gaines Do That BuzzFeed Can Attack Next." You know, pretty horrific stuff.
That's awesome.
It is. One of the things was they quote, and by the way, they give a tagline, and then they show a picture from the Gaines Instagram feed. So here's one of them. They conscript their children into forced chores such as feeding goats, and it shows a little kid playing with goats. So, I mean, these people are obviously the worst, godless people on the face of the planet, according to BuzzFeed. So just goes to show that although it's declining rapidly, there is still some journalistic integrity out there, but there is certainly none at BuzzFeed. And with that, I'll kick it back to Alex so we can talk about important stuff.
Wow, what amazes me about this is that the media, the liberal media, the moderate to liberal media came out
straight
and
up
defended this. Like, that's pretty mind-blowing for me. I have no love for the liberal media. You've probably have I had my media rant yet? What makes me more mad in watching political debates on TV, more than what was worse than watching various candidates in this election argue with each other, was watching the media warp and twist questions and intentions to fit their ends. That made me furious. It would be my favorite Christmas present would be to see CNN go up in flames tomorrow. That would be great. That would be
So,
beautiful.
would it be safe to say, Alex, that you are not a fan of the mainstream media?
Not really. Slightly. Like, you know, like the verses. I'm going to stop now. So this just kind of blew my mind, though. Like, they actually came out and defended, like, a lot of people. Like, and I know, like, Buzzfeed is kind of just like an entertainment / almost like a gossip column, right? Like, it's like a
Totally.
like
Trending.
trending, entertainment weekly kind of thing. So I would expect them to have a very low standard of journalistic integrity for this kind of.
Oh,
this
yeah.
is like an open shots fired piece on these people. It's interesting. I like to know the real reasons behind all this. I want to know if they just wanted hits or what. I don't know. I like how if you scroll down, though, and look at the bottom of the article, like, you can rate their article on so many different scales, and they're, like, your reaction that, like, their highest ranking was failure by their own readers.
I see that.
Wow.
Apparently, that's what matters.
But it also
Pretty
goes
much.
to show, too, that the mentality that if you don't think like the group, they must destroy you.
Amen.
Like, if you don't think correctly, they must end your career.
Yeah, which, I mean, real quick, and I know we need to move on, but that goes against everything that we're supposed to have in this country concerning liberty. The idea is, okay, Andy, you and I may not agree about some things. I know actually there's some theological stuff that you and I don't agree with, but I respect your ability to hold that view. And in this world, it's, hey, if you disagree with me, one, that means you hate me. And two, unless you go to the point of absolute celebration of the things that I do, then I'm going to assume that you're against me and you hate me and despise me. And for that, you should be silenced.
Yeah. Absolutely. What's your problem, Andy? I'm just kidding. But yeah, it is. It's true. It's really sad that it's reached that point. But wow, man. Yeah, I saw some stuff floating around about this whole business. I saw like some Facebook posts of people like picking fun at the Gaines or defending the Gaines. And I was like, who are these people? It's like they themselves aren't even involved here, from what I understand, right? Like they themselves didn't even like do anything. They didn't say anything. This is really a poke at their church. Like, even the title of the article is "Their Church is Firmly Against Same-Sex Marriage," not necessarily them themselves.
I read that a little bit differently because in the fourth article in the paragraph,
Unless they changed
check it out. Yeah, so the question asked, so are the Gaineses against same-sex marriage? I mean, there's obviously an agenda here. The agenda is to do what was done to the folks at Duck Dynasty and try to drive them off the air. That's what I really believe this was about. It was an attempt by the author here, push your own agenda to create a storm like what happened with Duck Dynasty.
Right,
and
or the Duggars, man. The poor Duggars. I feel bad for what happened to them. They just got slime-balled into oblivion.
They did.
I was intrigued with HGTV's response to this whole thing too. If you remember, they actually fired a couple people that did a show for their position on same-sex marriage. Yeah, and this time, I think they got a lot of pushback from that, I guess, because this time they said that they include a number of different walks of life on their show. They play the diversity card. So they're not getting rid of the Gaines this time. So I think they learned their lesson the first time.
Oh, yeah,
that was a good move because every redneck and their mother, when the Duck Dynasty got canceled, was like, I'm taking my shotgun and I'm going over to give. It wasn't HGTV. I can't remember who it was, but
I think.
Was it TLC? I'm going to go over there and give them a piece of my mind.
Yeah. Well, that's their
do it in truth and love, Andrew. Do it in truth and love.
It's A&E. It's A&E. Yeah, definitely do it in the truth and love.
Oh, A&E, okay.
Don't pull a shotgun wedding type move. Do it with truth and love.
The Duggars were TLC. My bad.
Ah, gotcha.
But it's because this is their number one selling show right now, isn't it? It's like one of their top shows.
It's popular.
They can't lose this.
It's playing in my house all the time.
Andrew's like, they're making money off of me.
My wife's maiden name is Gaines, so like when this first popped up in my Facebook card, I was like, what?
Gaines and
yeah, that's right.
I was like, I knew that my in-laws were completely against same-sex marriage. I knew that forever. The media's just now picking up on this?
You were like, national controversy involving my in-laws.
Yeah, I was ready to go get a sign made. Like, this is where Keegan Gaines lives. We support real marriage.
Oh, gosh, you would be shot for that.
I probably would.
Okay, well, That's cool, man. Are you done, Andrew? Did you get this out of your system?
I'm done. I got it off my chest. I'm ready to talk about another very controversial
Basically,
subject.
also what happens, Andy, is once in a while, Andrew will call me and he say, I got to talk about this. I got to get this off my chest. I'm not going to be happy until this has been talked about. I say, okay, Andrew, I'm going to give you 10 minutes.
And he lets me rant. And dude, you gave me 15. That was very gracious
I did.
of you.
Yeah, but let's talk about some other stuff. Yeah, I'm glad that this all resolved for the moment well with the Gaines and all that kind of seemed to tied off. At least people came to their defense quite a bit, it seems like. BuzzFeed kind of got absolutely eaten alive on that one. But anyways, let's talk about some historical stuff because I've been reading some articles. I try to think that I'm an academic sometimes. I try to pretend that I know some stuff about academia, and I was like, oh, theological journals, that's a thing. I should read those. And I was kind of playing around with the Southern Baptist Theological Journal, or the Journal of Theology they put out, because I go to the Southern Baptist Seminary, so I read their journal. I know.
Yay!
But they put out an article, I think it was in the summer, from their summer edition, that was done by a guy named Rodney Stark, and he's a professor at Baylor, and he did something that really caught my eye called The Case for the Crusades. And I've kind of known a little bit about this, about some other perspectives on the Christian Crusades that people have not talked about. Like, I know that the Crusades, at least I remember growing up hearing that the Crusades were kind of the biggest sin that all of Christendom has committed. Like, it is the big number one no-no. This shows you how brutal Christianity is. I think I actually remember seeing tapes of, like, Richard Dawkins and what's the other guy's name who died a couple years ago? What's that guy who was like...
Christopher Hitchens.
Christopher Hitchens, yeah, that guy. They were like staunch atheists, would hold up the Crusades in their ears and say, like, the world would be so much better without people like this. And but if you really look at some of the historical evidence, and recently I've been doing, I don't know if you noticed, I've done a ton of church history lately. There's some other stuff involved in those Crusades, and what really went on there. And while there was... What's that?
I said, no way. Are you telling me that there are revisionist historians out there?
You should. Another time we're going to talk about the American Civil War. Really light things up on the show. Really.
And we will lose every follower we have.
Pretty much. But that being said, so the Crusades are not really a Christian and bloody invasion into a peaceful area or a peaceful area of Palestine that was minding its own business, and all of a sudden the Pope just decided to completely wipe out an entire people. I think there was a little bit more going on there. And Andy, as soon as I read this, I knew of the expert, or one of the experts, or somebody that I consider to be an expert on this matter, is Andy, who knows a lot of history, has read a lot of history, has an MA in history, and has actually come to me before and said, dude, you should check out this stuff about what really happened in the Crusades. So I was like, let me bring Andy into this, because he knows some stuff. So, Andy, what actually happened in the Crusades? Or general idea, if you don't mind.
Wow, where to begin?
Yeah, sorry. Can you also explain the whole universe while you're there?
Yeah. Can I ask a question real quick before we get started? Because this is I'm gonna have to mentally prepare myself a little bit. Are we gonna be rooting for the Papists in this podcast?
The Papists?
Yeah, the Catholics, the Roman Catholics.
I don't know about that.
How about I present you with information, and then you can make up your own mind?
Okay, that sounds good, because it's hard for me to root for the Papists. It's really hard.
I'm just here for the Templars. That's all I'm rooting for.
Oh.
I don't even care about
It's
all my Templar memes out.
It's good that we're going through this then, because I know they're about ready to come out with a Assassin's Creed movie, so I'm sure there's going to be a whole lot of new hit stuff on how awful the Templars are.
Dude, the Templars were dope.
I can't wait.
Okay, I'll let Andy talk. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Just what were the purpose? Let me hammer my point home a little bit more. The purpose of the Crusades was not just a bloody offensive, right? That's what I'm gathering.
It was a long-delayed defensive offensive.
Mm-hmm. How's that work?
Right. So ever since Islam began, it began to expand aggressively, and expanded very rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
And the territories it was conquering were very often Christian. The Holy Land, that was actually ruled by the Byzantine Empire, which were Greek Orthodox Christianity.
Right. Byzantine ruled Constantinople.
Correct.
Yeah, like one of the biggest things that I took away was so Muhammad, I believe Muhammad started preaching or becoming a big deal around the early 600s, if I'm correct. And wouldn't you say like the 700s to 750s, they had conquered like a massive empire they should never have had their hands on. Like, it was huge, the amount of territory they were able to control so quickly.
You did have different factions, but as far as an ideology, it had spread pretty widely. And even beyond the Middle East, North Africa fell, Spain.
Yeah.
The Moors even pushed into France.
Oh yeah, we had to like defend some of those at some point. I remember
enter Charles Martel. Smack.
The hammer.
The hammer.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, fun fact. So Charles Martel was the king of the Franks. That was the Germanic tribe that was ruling France at the time.
Right.
And now, to this day, Arabs still call us Franks in the West as a result of this encounter.
I think, and there's been like the targeted bombings in France, like deliberately by ISIS. When I remember reading when they bombed out. Didn't they bomb out a concert in Paris? And there was like ISIS publicly responded with like, "This is in revenge for the Crusades" or something like that. I remember hearing something about the Crusades when that bombing happened. Like something like, this is in response to what you did to us. Anyway,
it's interesting. Hey, can I ask? I have an interesting way to phrase this real quick. So, I mean, I grew up, I grew up in a Christian home with a Christian worldview, but I was still, for the most part, when we came to this point in history, Andy, I was kind of sold the bill of goods that this is the epitome of shame on Christianity past of what happened during the Crusades. Which, granted, there was clearly brutality on both sides. But I mean, let's dispel a fact. Anytime there's war, there's brutality on both sides. That's a horrible consequence of the reality of sin in our world. So my question is, it was Pope Urban II, right? Pope Urban II called for the First Crusade, right?
Right.
Okay. So the way I was kind of taught was, okay, so Pope Urban hated Muslims, and therefore Pope Urban wanted to punch him in the teeth, and so Pope Urban called for a crusade to go down and punch him in the teeth. That's not, and to use excessive brutality by all means possible. That, I'm guessing, is not the real story of what went down.
No, it is not.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, we don't really know Urban's heart, of course, but
right.
If you look at the speeches that he had, he was appealing to assisting the Eastern Brethren that were being persecuted by Muslim invaders. And the First Crusade was in response to aid that the Byzantine Emperor Alexius Comnenus requested of the West. Yeah, he expected mercenaries. He got a ideology instead, a whole movement. But
hashtag papists.
Yes, exactly. But they had lost a lot of territory in the 11th century, especially after the Battle of Manzikert. I think that was in the 1070s-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And so Urban was describing a lot of what, like the news of the persecutions that were going on with the killing, the enslaving.
Right.
And so he had called upon the Western Christians to unite, to stop fighting each other, and to go and help their Eastern brethren in reclaiming the Holy Land. And that brings us, I guess, to the definition of a crusade, too, is it's brokered by a pope. It's scored by a pope.
Right.
And it was for the purpose of either reclaiming or expanding Christendom.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And, but it was largely, I mean, can you tell us a little bit about what the backdrop to that was? Like, this wasn't just a land grab or a invasion or a wealth grab. Like, this was like an emergency defensive maneuver to stop
Absolutely.
Islam from overrunning. Go ahead.
Right. And it's very common for people to argue that this was an early form of European imperialism.
Right, yeah. Colonialism.
Correct. And to have a colony, you need to have like a host nation that's profiting off of it. What you see are multiple independent states that were formed as a result of the Crusade, and these were effectively buffer states that were guarding Europe.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong too. In terms of the money argument, like they just went in to get warlords and profit. Most European nobles and warlords lost a lot of money in the Crusades. Like it was hardly.
Oh yes.
It was a massive bank hit.
Because that's all you ever. I mean, that's so true. That's all you ever hear is that the Knights of St. John became so massively wealthy, and the Templars became so massively wealthy. And that might be true for those specific orders, but for the most part, I mean, wasn't one of the reasons, the famous story of Richard the Lionheart, he's off fighting the Crusades. One of the reasons that King John, the bad guy from, the Disney story, we'll let history decide that, but one of the reasons he seized power was he saw a financial mismanaged country that was being broke by the Crusades.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So, think about it. If you're a rich lord, you're running a prosperous nation, and your pope tells you, I want you to come up with 2,000 men and find a way on your money to ship them to Jerusalem or the port of Tyre. Can you imagine how expensive it is in the medieval times? This is before airports. This is before...
war is always expensive.
Right.
Always.
And outfit them and supply them and everything.
Well, let's think about how differently medieval warfare is from modern warfare.
Right.
The idea of a standing army is, it was done in ancient times, but post-ancient world, it's a relatively modern concept.
Right.
To go on a crusade, you had to fund yourself and your retainers.
Right.
You paid the bill, and so there's this interesting tradition of arguing that if you went on a crusade, you were probably a second-hand noble's son who didn't have an inheritance, and so he went off to a foreign land to go carve up some more land for his inheritance. But the scholar Jonathan Raleigh Smith, he's one of the leading Crusades researchers today. He did some pioneering research with computer technology of Crusades charters. And what he found out was how consistently expensive it was for pretty much everyone who went abroad. So if you were just the offhand son of a noble who didn't have any land for his inheritance, you couldn't afford the trip.
Oh, that's incredible.
There's just no way. Okay.
That's fascinating.
At this time, we've been going on for a little bit. I think we're going to actually wrap this one up. But I appreciate all that. That's great stuff, and we want to keep talking about this. I mean, there's some great material here, and I don't think we've even touched the fingertips of it. We'll bring this up next week. We want to continue talking about this a little bit, so we'll be back next week, and we'll kind of continue this discussion. We'll cut this one in half and be back briefly to talk more about the Crusades, because I know Andy's got we got tons of material about why you should believe, or why you should at least consider the possibility. I can't tell you what to believe. I'm an idiot. You can consider the possibility that maybe the Christians that were involved in the Crusades and the people that were involved in the Crusades weren't necessarily bloody warlords, and we have no reason to be ashamed of the actions taken, or at least by a large part in the ideology taken there. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Guys, we'll be back next week. Hope you guys have a great night.